Hey folks, this is Dr. Emily Scherning with American Resiliency. I'm here with this short video based on a community member's request for a video about talking about climate resilience with children. I think this is a really interesting topic. As we approach the holidays, everyone with kids in their lives is thinking about kids a lot, right? It's a time of year for children. And I think that a lot of us probably climate's on our minds. You wonder how to talk about it. I think a lot of people have a misconception that children are going to be scared if we talk with them about climate resilience. From my professional experience, that is not the case. And I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with children so that you know this isn't just some random lady saying this, right? So I have worked with thousands and thousands of children in my career as an educator, both as a human subjects researcher, creepiest kind of scientist, that's me, where, if you want to be working with children in educational experiments, education is not like some lighthearted thing necessarily. Education is critical for developing humans. We all need education. So, my training as a human subjects researcher, I took it very seriously. And I always worked to try to make sure that any kid who came into my sphere of influence, I had really thought out the harm that might be done to them. So when we talk about these questions that might be harmful to children, I think that this is really actually pretty well in my wheelhouse as a human subjects researcher. Kids aren't scared of the same things that we are scared about. Unless that is like spiders. Many kids are scared of spiders. We seem to have an instinctual thing there. A lot of us are scared of like changes in tax assessments, or we might be scared of suspicious noises or drips coming from the roof. These are not things that frighten children. Children have a very different experience moving through the world than we do. I think that's why some people have hard times remembering parts of their childhood because our brains change so much. Children have distinct needs. They have needs for protection. They have developmental and cognitive needs that we need to be able to meet if we want to give them a good education. But children don't need to be protected from climate information, and they don't react to it the way that adults do. I know this from having worked with many children on climate resilience in my community. In my experience, if children hear that the future is not going to be like the past, that's not as frightening to them as it would be to an adult because they don't have the past life experience that we have. If we talk to children about what the expected local conditions are in our community, they have much less of a need for grief processing than older people do. They look at it and they're like, oh, it looks to me like we need some more umbrellas around here. Like when I've talked with kids about the likely increase in hot days and the likely increase in bright days, in sunnier days in the area that I live in, they really become very solution oriented, and they do actually see it in like a pool oriented way. I don't mean to detract from the seriousness of the changes that are coming, but I think that it can be very grounding to work with children. They can be very action oriented, they can be very solution oriented, they can be very down to earth. And the fact that they don't have the same expectations that we do is very useful as we prepare them for a future that is more difficult than our present. And I think that that's another thing that's very difficult for us, and people with children in our lives, is that we have a fear that they're going to experience pain on a scale that we haven't experienced yet. I think many parents, they read this stuff about climate and they worry. They think maybe my child won't live to adulthood. It's terrible. But anytime you have a child, they might not live to adulthood. A friend of mine who studies evolutionary genetics, she runs a really good lab, heck of a lab. Her child died in his sleep. He got struck by acute flu. He died in his sleep when he was 3 years old. He woke up, he never woke up. She found the body. You never know what security you have in life. We don't really have any security. The fact that our children are going to have to live in this higher risk environment is not something that is going to frighten them the same way that it frightens us. I think that when you want to talk with children about climate resilience, to the degree that they're able to understand it, to the degree that they're like numerate and they can read a map, it's good to look through very factually with them what's likely to happen on the ground, what's likely to change. And in the context of that, I feel like there's a lot we can do to raise children and educate children so that they can be prepared to live in a world that is going to be more challenging than today and where we have to accept we're not going to know everything that's going to happen. We are going to have to be able to give up and hand power to the next generation because this is their world that is coming. We have to do what we can to build resilience, to lay the groundwork so that they have a shot at a good life, but it's their life. We're not going to be like parasailing into the sunset when we're 85. Thanks, we saved the world. I don't see this as the vision. We want to try and hand something strong and sustainable to our children. I see this more as the vision. And in service of that, I think it's really good for kids to be engaged in problem solving, to teach kids dialogue skills, to teach them how to communicate, how to resolve differences of opinion and differences in moral stance and moral injury to be able to resolve these things peacefully. I think that it's important to teach children exposure to the arts and give them chances to express themselves in their human fullness because this is an important way that humans process change and that it's important that we try to go into a world that's still beautiful. And I think it's very important that we teach our children to solve problems with their hands and use tools. You might not have read about this because you're not an educator, maybe, but there's a pretty big issue where the under 12 crowd has horrible grip strength because they're always on tablets and screens. So they can't use traditional tools. They need to be doing that, I think. If you want to be able to give people like the literal tools in their hands to literally solve problems when they are a grown up and they can be frightened of roof leaks like you and me. When we're talking about getting children for a world that is different from the world today, there's not really one key piece of knowledge. It's more of attitudes and aptitudes. Nurture the person that they are, get them ready to roll with it. We have a lot of fear, the older generations, and part of it is the media framing that we have been given around climate, which encourages us to really think about ourselves as being shot directly into the sun, which would be easier than having to create a resilient, sustainable society. It would be substantially easier to be shot directly into the sun. But I'm here trying to do the work, and I know that you are too. And our children, if we nurture them, if we educate them, they're going to be able to do so much to help us sooner than you think. And they will be having good ideas today if you work with them today. Kids aren't scared of these things the same way that we are. And I think that getting their perspective and being able to value their inputs, you could be surprised what a positive experience this could be if you engage with children about the likely projections for their area and use that as a starting point. Creating a place where children can learn often ends up being a place where you can learn as well. People don't learn by being like scared out of their wits or being really stressed. People learn by being in places that are playful, places where they're able to freely contribute, and places where they're able to explore. You may find that talking with children about climate resilience helps you get into a different place, a playful place, the kind of place where you can really solve problems. It's a good way to get ready, and we should all get ready together. These are not topics that have to be frightening for children, that have to be negative for families or communities when you're having experiences with children involved. Children may have grief processing needs around climate, but you shouldn't assume that they're as much a bunch of sad sacks as we are. This is the world that they're going to inherit. Let's do what we can to make it as good as possible. Let's get ready. Happy holidays for all of you who are like laboring under the prep work. I know how it goes. I'll talk to you soon. All right, folks, real quick, we got community chat coming up. Not this coming Sunday, the 10th, but the following one, September 17th, 2 p.m. Central Time. We're talking about resilience work on the ground. If you got something you want to share, if you got something you want advice about, bring it. I'd love to hear about it. We'd love to hear what's going on in your community. Thank you, all of you kind and wonderful people who give, who continue to give so much to this project. The financial donations, the volunteer work, the work that you help do spread the word. I appreciate all of it. Thanks for being here with me. Let's get ready.